Good morning, class. Now, as we continue on with our discussion regarding the Battle of the Alamo, we've already discussed our key players, David Crockett, William Travis, David Bowie, and Santa Anna. So as we continue on after we've discussed them, we're going to discuss the key events leading up to the actual Battle of the Alamo when it all began. And we're going to put together a timeline. I went ahead and drew our timeline out here on the whiteboard. I didn't use our large whiteboard, so I'm going to use our smaller one today. So as we do our timeline, I went ahead and put our first date on there, which was February the 8th. On February the 8th was when the first volunteers arrived to the Alamo, and that was with Davy Crockett, and it was the Alamo that arrived at the Alamo on the 8th with his 12 mounted Tennessee volunteers. Now, we're going to go ahead and put that on our timeline here. So February 8th was our first important date at the beginning of the Alamo. So February 1836. So then our next date was going to be February 24th, which wasn't quite 2 weeks later, and that is when Santa Anna actually arrived with his army. That is when really they decided the battle was going to begin, and that's when the independence for Texas became a key player in the history of Texas, was on this date, because that's when Santa Anna arrived and made the statement that they were going to win this battle, that Texas was not going to continue to be free or actually be able to get their freedom. And so that was obviously a very important date. So February 24th will be our next date on the timeline. Go ahead and put that on your timeline. So now our next date would be, actually it is February 24th too, excuse me. It's when Travis wrote his famous letter to the people of Texas and to the United States requesting assistance, because he knew that they were quite outnumbered by Santa Anna's army, and he knew that they would be defeated. And so he wrote letters continually requesting assistance, but that assistance obviously never came. It tried to get there, but then was diverted for other battles in Texas, and so it never made it. So February 24th already has a date on here, but we're going to put a date up at the top. Actually, we'll use a different color, and we're going to put February 24th here as an important date, 1836, for Travis. This is when he wrote his letters. So our next date, after they waited for about a week, was on, that's right, March 5th. March 5th was when Travis drew the line in the sand and told his soldiers, every man that was in the Alamo, which was not many, every man in the Alamo had the option of staying and fighting for the freedom of Texas, or they had the opportunity to leave. They would not be considered cowards for leaving, because they knew going into this they were pretty much fighting a losing battle. So Travis gave them the opportunity to leave, and no one left. Everyone stayed to fight to win the battle and to win Texas's independence. So the next date we're going to put on our timeline is going to be March 5th, 1836. And I'm just going to go ahead and label it down here for you guys, drew the line, so that when you're having your discussions a little bit later in class, you'll remember all these dates up here on the board. So drew the line in the sand for his soldiers. So our next date was the very next day, and it was March the 6th, and that's when the actual battle took place. The first shot has never actually been determined for sure which side it came from. Most people say it came from Texas. Some historians say it came from Santa Anna's side, so who's to say on that? But the actual first shot took place on March 6th, and that's when the battle began. Now, we know that Travis was one of the very first ones killed because he was ill and he was in his deathbed, and they came in and they killed him immediately. It only took a matter of hours for this battle to actually begin and to end. After everything that led up to it and everything after it, this battle was actually very short, but in terms of history, this was probably one of the most important battles and the most important date that you can remember as far as when the actual battle took place, which was, of course, March 6th. I'm sorry, I didn't write it on your calendar here for you, on your timeline. And that's the actual date of the Battle of the Alamo. And we all, as we've already studied, know what happens, that once the battle began, a few short hours later, every single Texan was killed. Santa Anna did not take prisoners. He killed them all. So those are your important dates you need to remember for your timeline, and as far as when you're writing your papers and doing your group project this week, those are dates that you need to make sure that are key players in your papers and in your groups, because those things are the ones that affected Texas the most. Those dates are what affected Texas the most. Now, as we move on to our group projects, because that's what we're going to go ahead and start on in class today, please remember those dates, remember your key players, and now on your group project, what you're supposed to be doing is you're supposed to pick a product, and you're going to create a product, and you can put together a commercial, or you can put together a newspaper ad about that product, and this is going to be a product that they would actually use during that time period. So whether it be a weapon of destruction or something Texans that actually are not at the battle that they could use, that's what you'll be doing with that. So just keep that in mind, keep these dates in mind, keep your key players in mind. I've got your printout for your projects and your papers and all the information you need for that. So if you have any questions, though, please be sure and ask. I'll be glad to help out any way possible. So go ahead and get in your groups, and we'll get started on our projects.